welcome to this broadcast. I'm Nayantara Rai, working from home during the lockdown. I hope all of you viewers are safe and healthy. I've got a very special guest with me. Please welcome Butler, the co-founder and CEO of Square Panda. Andy joining us all the way from Silicon Valley. Square Panda uses neuroscience as well as artificial intelligence to build the building blocks for children aged between 2 and 8. Let's find out more with our guest, Andy Butler. Andy, first up, I hope you and your family and your entire team at Square Panda are indeed safe and healthy. Welcome to this special broadcast in India. Tell us a bit about Square Panda, and then we'll go into the specifics.
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to reach out to you across the continents, the ocean, and actually have the opportunity to speak about Square Panda. So thank you very much, and I hope everybody is safe in your household also. So Square Panda is a very unique literacy program for both English language learners, as you have in India, as well as primary English speakers, as we have in the United States public schools. And we focus on hyper-personalizing the curriculum to every particular child, because every child learns different skills that are fundamental to being fluent in a language. They learn these different skills at different rates, and they have a different proficiency against that matrix of skills that are required.
And you are doing this for children aged between 2 and 8. But this is normally a role that would be played by parents, or when they start going to preschool, or teachers. How easy has it been to convince the parents that sign up for Square Panda, it's easier, better for the children?
So the method of convincing parents to do this is really to fall back on neuroscience. If you look at brain development, we now have a deep understanding of brain development, which areas of the brain develop for which skills at what point in a child's life. And between the ages of 2 through 8 years of age, 85% of the neural connections for language proficiency get performed. That's why it's so hard as a young adult or an older adult to learn a language, is your brain has lost a certain amount of plasticity, and creating these new neural connections is a lot harder for your brain to do. So the optimal time is ages 2 through 8. And when parents and educators truly understand that, they realize that this is the most fertile period of time to invest in a child's language skills or secondary language skills.
But I'm a bit curious. How did Square Panda start? How did it actually start? How did you get this idea?
Yeah. So, my background is I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've always started up companies, and I've started a variety of different companies, always in the educational space, and always looking for appropriate applications of technology in marketplaces that were underserved by technology. That has always been my area of interest and my area of business success. And so when my daughter was in first grade, she started to change in terms of her attitude to school. Instead of the joyful little child that she was in pre-K and kindergarten, she started resisting going to school, and she started failing in subjects. And so we had her tested for dyslexia, and we learned that she was highly dyslexic. And immediately, I turned to my wife, who's a professor in medicine at Stanford University, who called up her colleagues over at Stanford University and the education department. And a whole new world opened up to us. First of all, we learned that, academic educators these days come from a neurology background. They look at curriculum from a neurology perspective of, they know which areas of the brain need to be built up, reinforced. to be proficient at different skills. And they can now test with these wonderful little shower caps with saltwater electrodes on them to see which areas of the brain are being stimulated by curriculum and which are not. Technology is rapidly decreasing the cost affordability of over the internet, communications, cloud data storage, AI, tablets, and touchscreen devices are becoming ubiquitous. We can bring this into a cohesive, appropriately designed technology that'll have real impact on all children learning to learn a language by adapting on a real-time basis. And that was the birth, the start of Square Panda.
It's really fascinating, and it's because of something so personal to you that you were able to build this product. So I want to ask you this one question: if I'm a parent and I get Square Panda and I work on it with my child, will I know if my child is dyslexic? Does it have red flags? Because unfortunately, in the United States or in India, for that matter, we don't get to know till the children are much older.
That's a great question. I mean, in in the United States schools, the vast majority, I think in California alone, 85% of dyslexia assessments happen after the fourth grade, in fifth, sixth, and seventh grade, when the child starts failing in every subject, and it's often, misinterpreted. It's often misinterpreted as attention deficit disorder, that a child becomes frustrated in class because they can't read, or they can't read at the same proficiency level as a child. And so to answer, so the society really does need to test as early as possible. And there's research that is happening right now in the major universities, in Yale, UCSF Dyslexia Center, Stanford University, to be able to assess as early as 4 and 5 years of age. As soon as that research matures, we will integrate that into Square Panda, but that does not exist as of today.
Okay. Can you, before I go further, I just have one question to ask. Incidentally, I love the panda behind you. How did you come up with this name, Square Panda?
Well, it's a great metaphor for what it's like to be a child. You have all the innocence of a panda, but you're kind of awkward. You don't fit in this rounded out world. You're kind of square. You're kind of clumsy. You're kind of, always out of balance. And so it was actually, out of a brainstorm session, and it combined with the visual image, the name and the visual image stuck. And we all immediately embraced the concept against all the other concepts we came up with.
I also want to ask you a question on behalf of the parents that are watching this interview. Should they use Square Panda exactly the same way as maybe an educator would, or the functionalities are different?
No, so I mean, the way we differentiate between the parent and the child and the teacher, a professional educator, is, a parent doesn't want to turn themselves into a teaching professional, nor do they have the time to do that. And so what we try to use, the way we've architected Square Panda for the home use is so a good portion of the curriculum is autonomous. The child can learn on their own. And then based on the child's progress autonomously, it reports back to the parent. And then we give parents handy hints of how they can reinforce the progress that their child has made. In the education side, teachers like to have more control over that progress, and they like to manage that progress, not wait till after the fact. And so, we have a very extensive teacher portal that gives teachers daily assessments against 8 different vectors of language skills that are required to become fluent. And the teacher can literally see a dashboard with these skills changing on a daily basis. And then they can choose how to apply the curriculum to accelerate one skill over the other.
Did you have to come out with some innovations for the times that we're in? I'm talking about COVID-19 and the lockdown. You're in California. That was one of the first in the United States to go in lockdown. I'm working from home. India's in the midst of a lockdown while we're recording this interview. Did you have to do something special during this period?
Oh gosh, yes. So we were fortunate in that we always had a home version and a school version of our curriculum. So we were already ahead of most of the people who play in this, most of the companies who play in this space. And what we had to do is we treated them as separate silos. But what teachers now need to do in this, school to home connection is they need to see the progress in the school, the data from the school, and the data from the home, and they need to see it, segregated from one another, and then they need to be able to merge it together. So that whole data pipeline we had to create in a matter of 3 weeks to be able to have that degree of control over both environments. And then we're also working on how the teachers can help the parents in the absence of having the teacher in the home, which is not happening, is how they can help the parent, in the parents' spare time when they're not conducting their own jobs, employment remotely, how they can support the parent with handy hints.
And did you see a surge in traffic during the lockdown, COVID-19?
Oh gosh, yes. We've seen almost an explosion on the parent side. We've always had interest on the home side, and I mean on the school side. We've been gradually building that, our penetration into schools throughout the United States. But during this period of time, parents have been swarming to our website to seek assistance in how they can support their child's learning progress in absence of those children going to school every day.
Now, Square Panda also has an app, SquareTales, which deals with reading. It deals with it has games as well. What's that about?
So we really look at our platform as a learning system, and there's a degree with every learning system. You want kind of overlap between them because using different practices but covering the same curriculum reinforces the lessons being taught. Like games can teach a child letter sound correspondence and various, spelling and vocabulary enhancement. But then when you reinforce that in a reading environment, you are using kind of a different practice that gives you different assets like comprehension tests. Now I can test when a child in SquareTales reads a small book, not only did they learn how to read those words and pronounce them correctly, but did they get the context of when the events happened, in what order, do they remember the vocabulary that was taught, on top of all the phonetics and the pronunciation that happens.
Do you ever guide the educators, the parents, of how much time a child should also spend on the app? Because there's also a fear that I don't want my child to be addicted to screen time or the lights, and might hurt the eyes, or they might just get addicted to the screens. You see a lot of parents very concerned about that.
Absolutely. I mean, parents, should be concerned about screen time, and you should be able to manage that. It's just, but it's a tool to be managed. Is to deny a child that tool, which obviously engages them, without managing it is a waste of an opportunity. So that's another reason why we have the physical books, is to teach them the things that only physical books can really teach, which is turning pages. Where is the title of the book? Who is the author of the book? Those are the pedagogical term for that is book conventions. Physical books are uniquely, gifted to be able to teach book conventions, which is absolutely essential for a child's progress in literacy.
At the beginning of this interview, one of the gentlemen that you mentioned, John Chambers, when he was in India last time, I did have the opportunity to interview him. And he said that one of the areas he thinks is going to explode is going to be of regional languages, how quickly we see technology being used with regional languages for various kind of explosions, whether it is digital payment or whether it is education. Is that something that you have ever considered, or do you want to right now stick with the English language?
So we the we would love to eventually get there, but the whole, if you look at the depth of curriculum and the depth of personalization and the depth of optimization once we have large, populations using the product is an enormous amount of work. And we are constantly improving and optimizing. So we don't want to be what we call, a mile wide and an inch deep. We want to be, very focused and very, very deep so that we service every possible personal learner profile in their quest for becoming proficient at English. Once we've mastered that, sure, we'd love to expand to other languages, especially, regional languages.
What about people who, adults, whose first language may not be English? Could they look at Square Panda just to pick up the language?
Sure, but I mean, it's really not our primary focus. I mean, our games and our animation are all very much focused at engaging and also through humor. It's very childlike humor. It's not adult humor. We're very, very focused. Could an adult derive some value? Sure, but that's not what we, chase after.
Yeah, that's not market. Okay, I want to now ask you, you started with such your journey with Square Panda started on a very personal note. It started from home with your daughter. So since Square Panda and since you've been around, you want to share some anecdotes of how it has actually changed families' lives of children?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, with my own daughter, for example, is, many of the games were developed with interactions with my own daughter. One of our most popular game is a game we call a lagoon game because it takes place near what looks like a pond or a lagoon, and it has, well, before I describe the game, the derivation of it came from a game that my daughter played. I played with my daughter, and I would have her write any 5 words down on a piece of paper, any 5 letters, and I'd have to pronounce it. And of course, she just did random letters, and I would struggle to pronounce it, and I would have to say "Goo swig" or something. And these are nonsense words, but I would try to phonetically pronounce the nonsense word, which would send her into hilarious giggles. When a young child hears "Guggeswurg," it's like they think it's absolutely hilarious. And seeing an adult struggle with the pronunciation makes it even funnier. And so we play this game all the time. And there was a method to my madness. There is real phonetic exercise of trying to pronounce even arbitrarily arrayed words.
That's really
Yeah.
cool, yeah. And I'm sure you get this from all over. But if I could now come to India, it's where you have your largest office outside of the United States. What are your strategies for India? What's it been like as a market for you?
So we just, India is our largest office in terms of personnel, almost in terms of budget too these days. We started off as a software hub, no big surprise there. And for both gaming and a lot of our intensive data software work. But in the last 6-9 months, we've actually started marketing, and we've focused on B2G, B2B, and also B2C. We've just launched our consumer effort. We've reached out with a free product, a version of SquareTales, the digital book, and we're actually getting some pretty good traction on our initial consumer launch. And we also have pilots and trials going on in various schools around in states in India, in school systems.
So I'm guessing the data might have increased because of COVID-19 for India as well.
Yeah, COVID-19 is a worldwide, issue to be dealt with. And yes, some of the talks with states have frozen because they have to attend to their health issues naturally. That's the number one priority. But what COVID-19 has definitely done for us, as well as other ed tech companies, has really highlighted the importance of education in the home. That education cannot just stop at the fence or the gate of the school. It really is a continuum that has to be carried through to home in a greater degree than just homework. I mean, homework, just task-driven exercises, is actually a repetition of, did you learn what we taught in class? Rather than, here is new material that you can learn at home, and you can do it in a more or less autonomous fashion. That is the revolution that is going to happen. That's, the school to home connection, remote learning, especially in India. Remote learning is a very, very powerful tool, because you don't have enough teachers for every child that deserves to have the best education. And so one way to overcome that is definitely remote learning. So COVID-19 is actually highlighting that need and making, both governments and parents support the evolution of products to be able to satisfy that need.
And when you are in different markets, do you think have you ever had to maybe adapt Square Panda or SquareTales culturally, or it's the same product irrespective of geography?
No, I mean, there is definitely a localization effort that we did in China that we're doing in India. We're doing instructions in English. We're doing instructions. More and more, we'll be doing the instructions for the parents and the teachers mostly, in the regional language, so that they can help the child if they hit roadblocks. But we really want to do as much as possible when the child engages in immersion. But from a game standpoint, what makes a child engaged and find humorous and also enlightening, those are in this age group, that's pretty much universal. The first challenge is just me being able to repeat, just to be able to say in another language, what does this mean? I got to be able, to repeat what I just heard. And we take that for granted. That's not necessarily easy when you're encountering radically different phonemes for the first time. Learning those two other languages, I got a lot of laughs and giggles from the people. And I made a lot of very humorous mistakes.
About what the adults could use, I will admit it, and I can't believe I'm admitting this on national television, is because I'm struggling to learn Spanish. Okay, I've been downloading these apps and I am useless at it. I don't know how it is the second most popular language, but before I wrap up, I'm going to make this my final question. I'm not just asking this as a tennis fan. I know there's going to be a lot of interest on this. Andrea Agassi is on the board. He's so passionate about education. He's always said that he didn't have a choice. He had to drop out of school to pursue his his love for tennis and become a professional tennis player. But it made him realize that when you don't have that, how life can throw a spanner at you. How do you convince him to come on board? Has it made a difference? How involved is he?
So I didn't know Andre Agassi before I started Square Panda, and I literally did a cold call and called up his office. Yeah. And, I called up his office several times and finally got his general manager of his office, who convinced me I was wasting my time. And I didn't take no for an answer. And so I said, just give me your personal time and vet it and see if Andre would be interested. I know Andre's interested in education. I read his book. He's passionate about education. We can really make a difference. And, his general manager, a gentleman who used to be the vice president of Nike for marketing and recruited Andre to Nike at age 14. He finally granted me an interview, and he gave me 15 minutes, and that 15 minutes turned into 2.5 hours of conversation. And at the end of it, he said, okay, Andre has to see this.
Education is hope. And with on that very optimistic note, Andy Butler, I'm going to thank you for taking the time out to join us here for this interview. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you very much. Take care.